everybody. So we're in the yard, we're hauled out, and we're going to have bottom paint done. But we also are going to replace our cutlass bearing. So the first thing we have to do is pull the prop. And after we pull the prop, we have to pull the shaft out into the boat. So we're going to take the drive shaft apart and pull that into the boat and then replace the cutlass bearing. So that's what we're doing right now. First thing we're going to do is we're going to move this cotter key. Then we're going to take these bolts off. Then we're going to move the prop off and pull the shaft through. So this shouldn't be too hard. Oh, by the way, with a tapered shaft and a cotter key, if it's done right, even if the bolts come loose, it's still okay and everything will still stay on.
So which part is the cutlass bearing?
Cutlass bearing is right back here. So
okay.
Let's get the zinc off. These zincs aren't very corroded and we could reuse them, but we're just going to replace them. Yes, we're replacing this bearing right in here. Now we're going to go inside, we're going to pull the shaft forward.
Alrighty. So we've done this before, but we are going to be taking off the 4 bolts around this. Quick update, we got these off. One of them is bad, so we're keeping it separate. But when we decided to try and move it back, well, why don't you explain?
It just doesn't want to come back far enough. There's not enough play in the cutlass bearing for it to move back. So we're going to take the flange off. I've got to be able to move the shaft back. You might have to take both flanges off.
Now that we've got both of these things off the flange, we should hopefully be able to take it off once we figure out how exactly. So, after some professional advice, what you're looking at, by the way, is the stuffing box. He was determined that we just need to disassemble every little bit of this slowly, one piece at a time, and that we'd get everything off eventually. Anyway, what I'm going to do is loosen up that hose clamp right there so we can move the hose back. Anyway, so I will get back to you after I do that. This is space for like literally one person's. That was a lot of work. Those hose clamps were dug into the hose. There's our stuffing box loose and off. Well, that was exhausting. I showed a little bit of what I was doing earlier, but that banging, what was that? What tool was that? What method was it?
Let's go downstairs and I will show you. First off, there's a pin, a key that holds the shaft on, right? So what you want to do is you want to take a rod, like a screwdriver or something, and you want to pound the key out the back. After that, there's a shim, and you want to pound it out as well with a screwdriver from this end. So you pound that loose, and these things, even though they don't look like they're going to come off, it is going to come off if you turn it exactly the right way. Yeah. Barely. Look at that, but it does. You can't actually get the prop off, and then the shaft. You have to be careful with these. They're either made of bronze or they're made of nylon, and so you don't want to damage them. And this key goes right in a slot right there. So what you do is, as you're moving the prop back, you jam that out with a screwdriver, because otherwise it'll pull here, and notice how it goes up, see, and it'll jam. So as you're pulling the prop off, you want to be tapping this back as the prop comes off. This cap is on here, and these are really hard to get off because usually they're sealed with 5200 right around here. There's a set screw. The set screw is right here. So the first thing you want to do is take the set screw out, and then you can rotate this. And what we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to get a pipe, put it on there, and we're going to get a hydraulic press, and we're going to press the pipe to press on that. We'll get a new bearing in it, and I don't know if you can see that. It's not too bad, but there is play here, and we did damage this when we let our shaft come apart.
I like how you imply that we let it come apart. It wiggled apart on its own accord and we just caught it.
I know. Anyway, once we get this out, then we'll be able to get the shaft out. And when we get the shaft out, we can make sure that it's true and straight.
I guess it is time to call it a day and come back tomorrow. Well, it's been a pretty busy couple hours, but I'll show you what's been done. Morning, everybody, by the way. We have moved the cutlass bearing, and I have put the safety wire and the set screws back in. I think we're debating on pulling the shaft out of the boat.
We just got the drive shaft out. We had to pass the shaft under the support that was under that hanger bearing and then pull it up through the supports on top of the gray water tank. So here's the drive shaft we got out. There's the stuffing box. There's where the cutlass bearing mounts in the tube. So now we're gonna clean all this up, make sure the shaft is straight and realign it. We've been polishing the drive shaft. We're using some emery cloth. We have quite a bit of it, but you almost do it like polishing a shoe. So you don't have to be heavy with it. And then you rotate the shaft just a little bit, and you come back and you do a little more. That's what we've been doing to the whole shaft. We found a couple of places. I don't know if you can see, but right here, you can feel it as you run your hand across it. And that comes from the stuffing box gripping just a little too tight and getting a little warm, and it wears. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna increase the size of the stuffing box, maybe a little bit, or maybe decrease it a little bit, not sure which, and get off of this area so that we're on some clean metal. And it will seal better if we do that. You wouldn't think that some Tefloning impregnated rope would actually, you know, make a groove in the metal, but it will over years. We also cleaned off the threads here. This pink color is indicative of the zinc coming out of the bronze, and so this looks like it's not very thick, but there is a spot right here where it's pretty well corroded. Either that or that's a casting problem. But as we take the wire brush to this, we're really careful. So those threads are nice and clean now, and there's a little bit of a set screw in here. Right here. So here's our problem. If we change the metric any, when we come back here, this set screw won't line up exactly with the hole. We can't change the spacing. So we're going to clean up this piece just a little bit. But if you notice, much like on one of the anti-siphon devices we worked on a while back, there was a little bit of pink color, but it was just very superficial. It just comes right off. She cleans right up. We might have to get a new one of these.
But for now, we've got stuff to clean up.
Yep. Here's our stuffing box, all bead blasted and cleaned up. It has new packing material in it, same type of stuff as this. But anyway, it goes together like this. There's a worn spot on the shaft, and so what we're doing is we're increasing it 2 inches to that size. That way we get the packing material away from the worn spot. So we've got some new hose. This is a cute little thing about how to cut a hose straight. You put the clamp on the hose, then you just cut right along the hose clamp, and it makes a cut just as straight as can be. There, nice and straight. Use the hose clamp as a guide. That gives you a nice straight cut. By the way, for a stuffing box, you need a very reliable hose clamp. I just had a friend that had traditional hose clamps on instead of these, and they bust. He's leaking water, and it's actually happening right now. 2 inches longer. Now we have to get this entire stuffing box assembled before we put the shaft in. This is the whole thing back together. So we're going to put this in the boat and then slide it in.
So we've gotten this in finally and hung up. It's not secured in place yet. There's another process to do yet on that. But that was an interesting process.
We held the shaft up with rope like a sling. We made a sling out of 2 pieces of rope.
So that the guy in the closet could support it after it left the availability of me to hold it up. It was so much harder to get in than out. We'll get back to you as soon as we've got a little more done.
Here's the offending seacock. We took the cap off, and I've been spraying oil down in here all day today, and I've been tapping on it on and off, and I've been trying to get the handle on it and pulling. I've been pulling up while tapping on it, and it hasn't worked yet. So I'm going to try it again. I've backed these nut off so that I'm not showing any threads, because I don't want to damage the head of the bolt. And then I've just been tapping while I'm pulling, and there she moved. She's free. Okay, now we're going to take it apart. Now, we've been pounding on this for nearly 48 hours. This was part of the forward head. They had another head on here.
We'll get back to you once this is done.
Here's the barrel. Once you get these nuts off the end, it just pulls out.
It's not really held on by much, aside from like grease.
But now we need to clean this thing up and
get some fresh grease on it.
Yep. This nut is really stiff. It goes on one way, but not the other. I don't know what's wrong with these threads.
Because the audio was so incoherent, I'm going to explain better how it's put together. The through hole consists of a surprisingly small amount of pieces. We have a keyed and relatively thick washer with one flat side to make sure it only fits one way. We've got a nut that fits on top of it. And then we've got a lock nut, because these can't be too tight, otherwise you can't move them. We've got a tapered barrel that has a little addition for a handle and a long screw so it can be tightened down, and a hole in it. And we've got, you know, the through hole itself, which has a hole about here and is tapered to match this. Now, putting it all together, this being the hole, this being the through hole that the C-caulk is hooked to. First, the barrel goes in, then keyed ring goes in. After that, a nut, and then the lock nut, which is usually smaller but sometimes not. These all apply pressure on this, sealing up this gap here, which is normally filled with grease. That way, only when this circle lines up with this hole here can water flow into whatever system it needs it, or into the boat. With all that off, we are going to get each of those barrels out. And with that, it's loose. Good morning. We're just cleaning up what we didn't quite get done yesterday. Put in this key and tighten the set screw, which we did. The Allens were an Imperial, 3/16.
You have to leave a space between the prop and the cutlass bearing so that water can get in. On one of the through holes, we found one of the plugs was stripped. So when I tried to loosen it, it just came right out and fell out in my hand. Somebody stripped it at some point, and now we have to replace it. There's no way. You can see the difference in size between the corroded part and the shiny part. There's no threads left on here at all. It is completely stripped. I tried to put another one in, and it wouldn't fit, which means these threads are caught inside. So I'm going to take this 3/8 by 24 tap, and we're going to go ahead and clean out those threads. And then I have to get another plug. It's in here. I don't know if you can see, it's this one right here. So we're going to try and line this up perfectly straight and clean these threads out. Now I'm going to pull it out. Yep, lots of bronze on that. Now this will probably never fit in there again. Yeah, it just slides in. But we'll try the one on the top and see if it goes in, because this one still has good threads. I'm going to get a different one from another through hole that might have better threads on it.
We are currently putting in a helicoil.
Well, we're tapping this to 5/16.
While my dad is fixing the throttle lever outside, I am currently torquing down the drive shaft. So anyway, I'll get back to you when this is done.
Okay, we're cutting off the bolt the right length. Or the screw, actually. Boat yoga.
Yep, it is about 5:30 p.m.
We're planning on the next through holes to fix tomorrow.
Yeah, we're just doing some planning things for the next through holes to fix tomorrow.
But we're going to spend our lives down in this hole behind the sink.
Well, not life, a day. Anyway, like, subscribe, and we'll see you. Morning, y'all. We've already got a little bit of the day's tasks done so far, but the main thing we're doing today is we are going to be moving the sink drain in the main galley from an exit that is below the water line to an exit that is above the water line. Part of the process is that we have to take off this T. We've got to get one of these hose adapters off. Anyway, I'll get back to you once that's done.
Okay, so we're repositioning the sink hose. We're going to use this hose adapter to go on here. We're going to put that at an angle, put the hose adapter on it. We're going to run through the wall and back directly out. So we need one more of these to go on the through hole.
And one union to go between these two. So, while Dad goes and gets supplies, I'm going to get started on servicing these. Taking them off, taking out the barrel, and then putting everything back together. Anyway. Okay, so, as you see, I got both of these through holes apart. We've found on one of these that there is corrosion right here. That's not good. We're going to have to get a whole new one or something, because that's a mess. Aside from that, we will get right back to you once we start on the process.
That's our new T-fitting, and we put an elbow going back.
I would have shown some of the work, but just putting Teflon on is not anything exciting. Just wrap in the direction that it moves.
That's all.
Yeah, so all we're going to be doing right now is trying to see if we can quickly get this down in there
On our through hole.
and this hooked to our sink.
Hello everybody. We are lapping our seacocks. There's this stuff called lapping compound. It's basically a grease with sand in it, or emery, glass, diamond, whatever, some grit. And you spread this stuff on the barrel, on the tapered cone of your through hole. Then you put it in the seacock and you spin it. You don't go back and forth. You go all the way around. And you keep going all the way around until it's polished. Typically it only takes about 20 spins. We have quite a substantial amount of corrosion on this one, so it may take more than 20. In fact, this is our second time around. Once you're done with this, you have to make sure that you get all the grit out. You don't want to leave grit in there, so you've got to clean the seacock very, very well after you're done.
You wanted to say
They make it in fine and coarse grit. So you're supposed to do the coarse grit first and then the fine grit. I'm doing the coarse grit right now. Our mast is leaking. We have a Spartite installation underneath the mast tape. And it's leaking around the edge of the flange. I think it was a bad Spartite pour. I don't think it was done right. And we can't get the mast collar up. Since we can't get the mast collar up, we can't seal underneath the mast collar. We can't get the mast collar up because we have to pull the mast. This was not a good candidate for a Spartite pour. So I've caulked it the best we can. We're going to see if this helps. If it doesn't help, we may have to pull the mast. We've rebedded the screws. They're just wood screws. We've added some mast boot tape. And in order to pull this stuff out with a bad pour, it's gonna be a real problem. We're gonna try and stop our leak, and hopefully this will do it, at least temporarily. This may become a regular maintenance item. Over and over. This stuff is called Spartite, and it is incredibly hard stuff. It's probably the only thing worse than 5200 with regards to permanence. But this was a bad pour. It wasn't done properly. This collar is not structural. it was only for a seal and a dam. And so these are just wood screws that go into the teeth, and that's all. So it's not super sturdy, and the mast has been wobbling. And when the mast wobbles, it causes these screws to work. So we managed to cut the top of the spar tight off. We managed to get the collar up. We started trying to chisel it off until we realized that it's all the way down and it's never coming up again because it's gone into the sides. The sides were not smooth. So we can't go up, we can't go down with this stuff. And so we're going to have to keep it here. And what we're going to do is go with, instead of wood screws, we're going to drill all the way through, and we're going to put bolts in so that this collar becomes a structural piece to keep the mast from wiggling. And this stuff is supposed to be replace wedges, but as you can see, it did not do well. Look at this. Somebody wood screwed these things in when there are in fact bolt holes that go all the way through. Why would you do that? So I'm going to go back and I'm going to get some machine screws that go all the way through here. How many do I need? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to get 8 2.5-inch screws and some washers, and we're going to go all the way through. Now we're not going to put the silicone on until we get close to being able to have this pounded down.
You mean the 4200?
4200, yeah. Okay, I need the other hammer and I need a piece of wood. Okay, now we can get the 4200 under there. We have through-bolted the mast collar all the way through so that it is tight to the entire deck.
Just so you can see, this is where I was working.
Wood screws. Who does that? I mean, now I've got some nice wood screws for something else, but...
They're good ones. They're not bad wood screws. They're good stainless.
And just a little bit of trivia. How do you know that this is not factory original Hinckley?
Put your answers in the comments below. Anyway, like, subscribe, and we'll see you when the next video comes. As part of our repairs, we've got a guy sanding our hull at the moment. We're going to be getting bottom paint as well. Just a couple coats of ablative. But We've gotten, I don't know, what have we gotten done today? Seems like quite a bit.
We'll talk more about that. Yeah, what have we done today? So we fixed the handle on the throttle.
I finished both of those through holes.
We rebuilt the 2 forward cockpit drain through holes. We finished the V-berth through hole. We put a bolt in the raw water through hole. What was loose. We torqued down the drive shaft.
Yeah. We did some putting away, then some taking out.
Yep, we started organizing just a little bit to get ready for our next phases. And tomorrow we're working on the through holes that are down here beside the sink and maybe moving the drains.